One of the most hotly debated issues in the country is the issue of Uniform Civil Code, whether you call it that or anything else. But in common parlance, it's being referred to as a UCC, a directive principle of the Indian Constitution. And when, if, how a UCC will be implemented in India is the biggest issue that is being discussed in the political circles, especially after the mention of the subject by the Prime Minister himself in one of his rallies. I am joined by none other than Sai Deepak, counsel in the Supreme Court. Sai, many of these issues, a lot of the public looks forward to your opinions on these issues, and I am aware of the fact that many applicants or those who have submitted their submissions to the Law Commission that has invited submissions on the very complex issue of UCC have also sought your opinion. So can I begin by first asking you, what is your overall view of a UCC and this UCC debate or work being re-kick-started by the Law Commission?
So my positions have evolved with time. So perhaps a decade ago or so I was a very strong votary of the UCC. But with greater reading, I've come to the conclusion that it's a slightly complicated situation. My position on some of these Indic issues are well known. So one of the first questions that I've asked myself is, if the government proposes to come out with a UCC, what is it going to do to the already truncated rights of Hindus as a community, which were truncated as a consequence of the unilateral imposition of the Hindu Code Bill between 1955 and 61? So that's one question. Second, see, assume for a moment that if there is a particular issue with a particular group, and if it happens to be a Hindu group, typically the Indian state has shown the guts to come after the Hindu community to say that the state has the right of reform, and they have the constitutionally granted and bestowed rights, so to speak, despite countervailing rights of Hindus as a community to protect their customs. If such is the case, and if the government or the state is interested in addressing certain issues of polygamy and whatnot, or discrimination with respect to women in terms of succession and whatnot, in a particular group, why should the rest of the communities also be saddled with it?
So you're contending that if a fresh UCC or a uniform code comes for all citizens of the country, it will be once again Hindus who will end up making concessions, or will the others be brought up to par with the Hindu community, which is already under a unified code?
See, if this is one of those attempts where some of those groups which are perhaps behind the learning curve on some of these aspects, and they are sought to be brought at par with the rest of us, I would say it's a welcome move. But knowing how the Indian state has operated, where it has never believed in taking a community-specific action, particularly if the community happens to be a non-Hindu community, I typically approach these issues with a greater degree of circumspection, doubt and deep suspicion. That's where I'm coming from. Now, people might say that is this the position of a constitutional lawyer? Well, I can always say that this is the position of a practicing Hindu who also is a lawyer who practices in the Supreme Court. I'm entitled to this position because I've read how the state has typically wielded its power in a very unilateral fashion and in a very partisan fashion.
Disproportionately on the Hindu citizen.
Yes.
But I know for a fact that several parties who've made their submissions have contacted you, have sought your opinion, and some of those opinions would have made way to their submissions as well. Can I probe you a little bit more? As far as this exercise by the Law Commission is concerned, what would those submissions from your side be, or suggestions or queries be from your side?
So without violating any privilege issues, of course, broadly what we are looking at is those practices which are particular to a particular mindset, and from the standpoint of succession, from the standpoint of polygamy, that's one, and 3, child marriage. These are the broad issues that we have asked the Law Commission to seriously consider. See, if anybody wants to sell the UCC as one of the biggest endeavors of the fascist Indian state to prosecute a particular minority, it's unfortunate that this conversation revolves around minority persecution, when the same community and its counterparts in the rest of the world seem to have embraced better positions on the same issues. And particularly if assume for a moment that the Middle East happens to be the epicenter for a particular faith system, and that region has embraced a different position altogether. So to say that this particular subcontinent owes its allegiance to the faith more than the epicenter of the faith itself seems like an ahistoric position to take. It's almost as if a new convert says that he is more religious than the original himself.
But the whole issue of faith in itself is under question, right? Whether in a country like ours, a constitutional secular country, whether we can have faith govern these rules or not. Fundamentally, that is the question when it comes to UCC. When does the state intervene to overrule what may be mandated by faith?
So I've seen two contrasting positions and extreme positions being taken on the subject. First is to say that personal laws and issues such as marriage are pure civil issues which have nothing to do with faith. And the second is to say that they're entirely governed by faith and therefore they must always be governed by faith. One, in principle, I think it is a flawed argument to make that personal laws have nothing to do with faith. Yes, they do have everything to do with faith.
Yes.
Even within the community, there's huge diversity depending on the sect or the subsect you belong to.